Mr. Midgley came here looking for a room. It was right after you moved to New York. And it didn't seem right for that lovely room to be going to waste when there were so many people who needed it. He was such a lonely old man. All his kith and kin were dead, and it left him so forlorn and unhappy. We felt so sorry for him. And then, when his heart attack came, and he sat dead here in this chair looking so peaceful, remember, Martha? Well, we made up our minds then and there that if we could help other lonely old men to that same peace, we would.
Oh, he dropped dead right in that chair. Oh, how awful for you.
Oh, no, dear. Why, it was rather like old times. Your grandfather always used to have a cadaver or two around the house.
The play, Arsenic and Old Lace. The cast, Gene Stapleton, Marion Ross, Gary Sandy, Larry Storch, and Jonathan Frid. I'm Tom Bergeron. I'm not in the play. This is People Are Talking. Larry and Jonathan and Gary will be back in just a few moments. Gene Stapleton and Marion Ross join me now for the first segment. This is a talk show host's equivalent of being a kid on Christmas morning. This is just great having you all here.
Wow.
Saw the production the other night. It's a lot of fun. How long have you been doing it?
Well,
you've been doing it longer.
7 months in New York, and prior to that, 4 weeks. It started at the Great Lakes Theater Festival in Cleveland, went to Dallas, and then into New York for a successful 7-month run, the last 2 weeks of which Marion and the gentleman joined us. And we took to the road and broke records in every city we have been in. We opened, where did we open? Louisville, Kentucky, 1 week. Where did we go? New Haven, Connecticut, another week.
So I
Then
got
we
to
came
be
here,
in
right?
New York during the Christmas season, and Gene would rehearse with us all day and then play with the other cast all night. So,
is that customary for the star to rehearse with the...
Oh, of course it's customary
well,
if they have any sense at all. but a
lot of them apparently don't, because Marion was mentioning that...
No, listen, that's very kind, but it's an unusual situation to start with, that 4 people that surrounded me in these leading roles chose not to go on the road for various legitimate reasons. So that's an unusual situation. It's unusual to have a play that is an ensemble piece totally and recognizably so, right?
So I was telling Tom that I learned the lines at home in the kitchen, but I couldn't make a characterization because I had to wait to see how Gene and I would react together.
Yeah.
And you create a role together, the chemistry. And people said, you know what Barbara Brilliant said this morning? Do you know Barbara?
Yeah,
Brilliant?
yes, we actually work in the same building.
She said we were like 2 artists in a duet. Artists,
wow.
she said.
Let's print that.
You were talking about, backstage you were talking about working with Ricardo Montalban. You played his wife. And
I said, a lot of people think actors are very superficial people because we kiss each other and we touch each other a lot and quickly. And I said, I met Ricardo Montalban one morning at 6 o'clock and I had to play his wife and he was touching me and he had his hand on my knee and I thought, oh, why? But
were you wearing rich Corinthian leather or something? Was that no, that wasn't it.
But by 8 o'clock in the morning, we were probably in a scene getting out of bed saying, how are you, my darling? And as if we'd been married for 30 years. So this is why we quickly have to establish not only a physical comfortableness with one another.
It seemed...
we didn't know each other before. We didn't know each other
How
before.
How far do you go?
Right. How physical and how comfortable are these relationships?
There is a limit.
Yeah. Now, you both worked in such wonderful companies on each of your long-running shows. Was that chemistry there from the start? It certainly seemed to just come right out of the screen.
No, of course not, but it develops. That's very... there were many benefits from that, I found, that I never imagined. And one was, we became an ensemble, and you did too. And that develops. from the first day. It takes time, just as we in Arsenic and Old Lace did not meld as an ensemble for at least 4 weeks after we'd started playing together.
How would you describe, because we are going to talk certainly more about Arsenic and Old Lace, but for those who know you exclusively from All in the Family and Happy Days, how would you describe what those shows were that made such the impact that they did? What was it about Happy Days that ran for, what, 11 or 12 years?
11.
Yeah.
It was, even though we started on Love American Style, and then came, what was the movie that was based on?
American Graffiti.
American Graffiti, because they said, we like this idea, but...
That or Days of Wine and Roses. I didn't know which one it was.
They said, by the time we make a series about this 50s fad will be over.
Yeah.
Little did they know, it wasn't over at all. It just grew and grew and grew. There was something about that 50s period that appealed to the public at that time. And then, I thought about it a lot, because the ratings race was not so wild, we had a year in which we could get acquainted. A series now, if you don't click in 4 shows, you're out of there.
And in both cases, All in the Family didn't set the barns to burn right away, did it?
Well, it's a case not of the material, it's a case of finding the audience. With such a diversity of stuff on TV, and so many now, more channels, you have to give it time, but they don't. That's the trouble. But we would probably not have succeeded now because it took us an entire season and into reruns that summer to find and collect an audience and become a smash hit.
Are you tired to a degree of having to answer questions all the time about something that's in your past?
Yes.
Okay, well, we won't talk about that anymore.
No, I don't want to deny an important question about it, because it is still in reruns, and I am very proud that it stands up. The humor stands up. The issues, the conflict of ideas are still the same or similar. Now, to answer your question about why it's a success, my show, I think it was honest. And that was a great key to its success. It reflected the times. It dramatized, put out on the table for all of us to see, to laugh at, or to laugh with, to perceive, to understand the attitudes of the 70s.
It was you're right, your show was honest. It showed how people really think. Our show was a fantasy. Mrs. Cunningham was an absolute fantasy. She always had her pearls on, she had no friends. She never left the house. She had no life.
Did you ever lobby hard to get the...
one time I said...
Have an affair with the Fonz or something like that?
Well, we always did that.
Okay.
But,
you always did that?
We always did that.
Yeah.
But here was Betty Friedan in 1953, wrote Feminine Mystique, and this was a show about the 50s. So finally I said to the guys, I said, you know, women's lib was bubbling under the surface, coming, but the whole women's lib movement.
Feminism.
Or feminism.
Feminist movement.
But right in that period of the 50s, when Betty Friedan wrote that book, and so I said to them, don't you suppose we could have some mention of this going on?
Yes.
And they said, the show's not about you, my darling. Boys, it's about some children.
Let's, we have a viewer with a question. Hi, you're on People Are Talking.
Yes, this question's for both the ladies.
Okay.
Do they ever watch reruns of their old shows?
I don't, no.
I don't either.
I've seen them all, but I like to keep a distance between me and what I'm doing in the present.
Yeah. I'm not one of my greatest fans. Not that I just don't like, I don't like to just sit down and watch myself a lot.
I was wondering, when they killed Edith off, most of America was upset about that. As the person who had breathed life into the character, how did you feel about it?
Well, that was a year after I had completely terminated my activity there. The last show was a guest appearance with this series called Archie Bunker's Place. And I have no vested interest in the show. And however, they consulted me. Sweetly, all concerned, including Norman Lear, and said, this is what they're talking about. And I remember I was touring in a play in Florida, and Norman called me, and again, he said, I'm the one that holds out on this matter. It was a perfectly good reason to do it because in his series, Carol needed to get out of the bar and into the home again and date women and have some script diversity. So I said, it's a wonderful conversation. He said, it's very difficult for me to do this. And I said, Norman, it's fiction. She's fiction. And there was a dead silence at the end of the phone. He's in California, I'm in Florida. Silence. I thought, I've done it, I've hurt, I've offended Norman Lear, and that's the last thing I ever want to do in this world. Finally, he said, to me, she isn't. So, however, soon after that, it was done, and he agreed. Now, however, he said, if this is to be done, attention must be paid if Edith Bunker is to die. So he made a contribution of $500,000 to the National Organization for Women's Legal and Defense Education Fund.
I didn't know that. That's wonderful.
And it was called the Edith Bunker Memorial Fund, and it helped the cause of women and women's issues.
That's great. That's a great story. Thanks for sharing it. We'll be back, and Gary, Sandy, Jonathan Frid, and Larry Storch will be back as well. Stay with us.
Go ahead. Shoot me.
Don't come another step.
Shoot! Shoot! I cannot die because I am already dead.
Yeah, Jonathan Frid as Barnabas Collins, the blood-sucking Superman of Dark Shadows. Welcome, and welcome as well back again, Larry Storch and Gary Sandy, of course, F Troop, WKRP in Cincinnati, and Dark Shadows, fond memories, still being seen in many markets. How does, let's go back to a question I asked to Marion and Jean. This is the 25-point toss-up question. How does it feel for Jonathan to see that on the screens from over 10, 15 years ago?
Well, of late, until this moment in time, I was getting rather plump. And I was looking, I would look back on those pictures. Now I'm getting thin like it again after 4 weeks, 5, 6 weeks on Arsenic and Old Lace, running up and down those stairs. I'm getting to look like the old vampire again. I've lost 10 pounds in the last...
Is that right?
In the last 6 weeks, yeah.
Painless way?
Just running up and down those
I
stairs.
noticed you were 10 pounds.
You've been sharing it amongst
I'm
the
getting the hollow look again.
Right. Larry, F Troop was on, was 65 to 67, syndicated?
No, we were on from 63 to 64.
Oh, okay. All
But
right.
it seems like all of us, we made so many of them.
Yeah. Now, it's seen in so many markets. Do people still come up and Corporal Agarn and...
Corporal Agarn. I was in their living rooms, and they knew more about the Indians, and just as much about them as I did.
Now, does that... do you still feel almost, pardon me, Jonathan, haunted by that characterization?
I love it all the time. Sure, you know. I'm very proud of Corporal Agarn. He almost lost the West, but...
Yeah.
But
he did it with such finesse.
I know,
You have to admire that. Gary, what about you? For KRP also.
Well, I feel a little bit like Jean when she started off by saying, I'm very proud of it. I mean, I was very, very proud of being a part of WKRP in Cincinnati, but at the same time, I haven't seen it in about the last 5 years. It's been in syndication for 5 years. I have them all on tape, so if I want to watch one of them, I can pull it out and watch it. So it's a strange combination of being proud, but at the same time, I jokingly say it approaches the, hey, Chubby, sing that song about the twist,
Yeah.
And so after a while, it's like, yeah, well, there's other things, I was proud of it, but at the same time, I've moved on to other things, and I have yet to see it in the last 5 years. Every once in a while, I tune in. I started off in soap operas where they were never seen again. I did like 7 years of soaps. And it's very strange to turn on the tube and there you are, because I'm a different person and my mind is somewhere else.
Yeah. Now, you all worked in such fine ensembles. Is that what it certainly feels that way right now for you all in Arsenic and Old Lace? Would you say you've got to finally, and you can lie if you want, if you just want to make it more comfortable. Yeah. But is this a finely tuned machine we're looking at here?
Well, when I was telling you that Jean rehearsed with one, group as well as performing at night with another group. She was so fine and so generous to all of us that it sort of set the tone. Since we were all new coming in, we wouldn't be less than. We had to be wonderful because she was so wonderful to us. So if you had been different, we might all be we're capable of being all temperamental and horrible, aren't we? But we weren't.
This is a great group. You know, everybody sets the tone.
We all started off, I think, on stage in the first place, and it's an honor for me to be working with the likes of all these people. Because there is a thing called professionalism, and on that stage up there, we all started off in theater, and there is a professional attitude that prevails, and as Marion said, set by Jean, I think, because she was with the original cast and has been very gracious to allow us to come into the Brewster living room.
Our director set the tone, Brian Murray, a very fine director and actor as well, who was known, I think, to the country when they toured and also on Broadway in Noises Off. He played the director in that. But he's demanding and has very high standards in the theater.
Do you have to get your legs back when you go back to the theater after having been on a sound stage for so long? Is there any shift in how you approach it at all?
Well, none of us had really left this. I was doing a play with Gavin MacLeod last summer. Jean came, and that's how I happened to be in this show. Gary was 7 months on Broadway doing the...
In the last 5 years, I've probably done like 15 plays, you know. So usually along the way when you're doing a series or something like that, you're still doing theater at the same time.
That's more a public
so
misconception,
It's not as though it's this and that, you know.
Yeah. Larry, Jonathan, what about you?
Well, I've done some very serious theater. I played in Arthur Miller's The Price. Again, they used me because I was able to speak Russian. But it was a very serious role.
You're able to speak anything.
That's true. But the lovely thing about this is it's comedy. And in this one I play a German. So I have a better time. I'm enjoying myself more. Arthur Miller is very tough theater. And I have a better time in this because I love to hear the ripple of laughter.
Well, you're getting more than ripples out there.
Roar.
You're getting waves
I like
out there.
the roar of laughter.
I heard that the late Cary Grant said it was because of you that everybody thinks he said...
Yeah, I did it, Cary. It's a funny thing. I learned my lines in this show. I did an impression of Cary Grant years ago, and it was an easy name, Judy, 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 to get a handle on. And so I used it. But when I had to learn my lines... Jonathan plays Boris Karloff, and so on tape I had Boris Karloff's lines going. And who else was there? And Gary played Cary Grant in our show. And the other guy was Peter Lorre, whom I can do him, but I don't like to do him for my own amazement. I'll do him for my own amazement.
James Mason, do James Mason.
Well, I do James Mason, but
wonderful.
only to keep Marion happy.
I go up at the play, and I go and sit backstage up on the stairway waiting to come out, and I say, Larry comes up and sits beside me. We have to wait. And I say to him, who are you tonight?
And he says, I don't know.
Who are you? You are usually...
Well, she likes James Mason, so I do.
George Saunders a lot.
Oh, I do George Saunders for her every once in a while. I deviate, you know, just to keep things happy. You know.
Jonathan, for yourself, you're so associated, and certainly you're no sweet thing in this one. You're a mean bugger up there. And Barnabas Collins, do you and Tony Perkins hang out and compare notes or something, or how do you prepare for that?
This is like a send-up of Barnabas.
Yeah.
I'm up to the same shenanigans, only in a comic situation.
Yeah.
And however, you know, I have a little bit of problem in this particular kind of show, and I'm the director has wanted me to play all the menace in this role, and in a comedy, and you know, it's almost borders on farce, for me to come on and be this total menace. But somehow I'm beginning to think that the more I'm a menace, the more the comedy somehow or other pays off in the immediate moments following. It's this little thing you just learn from playing it. And
well, I love it when you come out and just like Karloff, the sleeves are a little too short and the arms sort of hang in a Neanderthal fashion. It's darn threatening. I've heard actors say that you have to really, you can't approach your part with any sense of parody. You have to really believe that that's a legitimate course of action for the character.
That's one of the things that Brian brought up, and I'm glad that Gene gave Brian his comeuppance there, because he's a heck of an actor. I mean, he was nominated for a Tony Award for Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, and he's just a brilliant guy and a very nice man. And that's one of the things he said to me in this straight man role, was that the thing you have to keep in mind is that you must play it like a serious drama. This is very serious to this guy, that he finds out that his two dear old aunts have buried people in the cellar after poisoning them, and it's not funny. But if you play it that way, it is funny, and I think that's important.
And they're so innocent about it, too. That's the charming thing. You almost want to have tea with them, but not quite. We'll be right back with more of your comments at our studio audience.
No wine, no wine.
No elderberry. I want to ask Larry Storch's wife something over here. You must wake up with a different guy every day, is that?
Yes, I do. I have my fantasies, too.
Yeah. Who's, Very good. Okay. I told you you'd get warmer after the lights went on in here, didn't I? Who's your favorite impersonation among the many he does?
Edward Horton, I think.
You do Edward Everett Horton?
Oh, my word, yes. Oh, dear me. Chance is the fool's name for fate.
Yes. He did all those, the fractured fairy tales. He did all those, didn't
That's
he?
right. He was one of the great, Edward Everett Horton was a very darling man and a very dear friend of mine, and I'm very proud to have known him. There, what do you think of that?
So given the option between waking up with Cary Grant, you choose Edward Everett Horton, huh?
I knew them both, and I would take Edward Everett Horton.
Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe we shouldn't go into that. I don't know.
He was Mr. Witherspoon in Arsenic and Old Lace, by the way.
Was he really?
In the movie.
In the movie?
That's true. That's right. He was Mr. Witherspoon.
Do any of you feel somewhat burdened by the movie characterizations? You had mentioned avoiding Peter Lorre for your character. This is blatantly allude to Boris Karloff, of course, and but Gary, you get Cary Grant hanging over, do you feel? Or
I've never seen the movie, so I don't know. That was on purpose. I didn't want to see it because Cary Grant I'm not, and I mean, I really didn't care to see what he did because I couldn't try to come up with whatever he did anyway, you know. So I was trying to play the plot.
I did see it. Somebody gave me a cassette of it about a month ago, and I was like a busman's holiday after being in the show in the early weeks and exhausted. I came back into New York, and there it was. So I played it one night till about 2 in the morning. And I'm rather glad I did see it because Raymond Massey played my role, and he was a menace, and so he gave me the confidence to play it as a menace. I mean, I'm not imitating him. I'm a very poor imitator anyway.
I read that you were, speaking of getting the confidence, I read somewhere that when you first started playing Barnabas Collins, you were pretty petrified every day.
It was I was a living hell every day.
Well, you were in the right area for it.
I was intimidated.
Why was that?
But no, really, though, the whole medium intimidated me. It was not the camera so much. It was the money involved, I suppose. I always felt that when you're on television, you're on to get to the next commercials, and that's our job, to keep people listening to them. I mean, you're involved with millions of dollars, and that's somehow why that should affect me as an actor, but it did.
Yeah.
And I was nervous wreck every day for about the first year, and it took. When I started to watch it in reruns about 4 years ago, I began to realize that some of those shows had tremendous charm, and it really was a unique show.
Is it difficult to be playing a character that the audience does not love? I mean, we play lovable.
That's the odd thing. He became a teen idol as a vampire.
He was loved.
But yes.
He was a lovable vampire and all those
You were
things.
on like 16 and Teen Beat with your fangs hanging out.
Yeah. I used to be on the 16 magazine cover with those kids. I was old enough to be their grandfather, not their father. I've forgotten who they were now, all those people.
Most of us have, I think. Let's go to the phones and get another viewer on. Hi, you're on People Are Talking.
Hi, Tom.
Yep.
Number one, they're all super, but my comment is for Jonathan Frid.
Okay.
I'm an avid fan of Dark Shadows, but now I heard there's a convention that goes around. Will it ever come to Boston? And his show is syndicated, I think, in Canada, but not here. Are they going to ever syndicate it here? Because they got everybody keyed up, and then they took it off. And I heard they were going to redo it. Will they ever redo it?
Okay.
Well, I'm sorry, I can't answer that question. I'm always surprised traveling around with this show that it is playing here, it isn't playing there. It's very erratic, but whether they'll bring it back. If you keep making enough noise, you'll get it back.
Write letters.
Yeah,
Right,
They're
yeah,
obsessed with letters.
Who has questions out here in the aisle? Go ahead.
I'd like to ask Marion Ross if she likes television or theater acting better.
I like television when there's an audience. I really like performing for an audience. We make a circle together, and you give me so much back. We've all feel that. Doing film, one camera, is a unique challenge in itself. All different, but we immediately enjoy audience participation things a lot.
Who else?
I just want to comment how pretty the two ladies are.
My.
Thank you. Well, back here. Okay, go ahead.
I'd like to ask Jean Stapleton. I've seen her in a lot of her movies, and I'm just so amazed because you always look different, you talk different in all your movies, and I'm just wondering how you just get into the character and change yourself. I always have to look for you to find which one you are because you look different in every one. It's very good.
You've made my day. I couldn't, want anything more.
But it didn't seem to be much Edith Bunker.
That is my goal, and that's my work.
It's amazing. Yeah.
Well, it would take us a course, in acting to tell you all about it, but I'm very grateful that I am a character actress. I've always been, and I find my great satisfaction and fulfillment in putting on the cloak of another character. I find it fascinating and interesting. I always have, and I think I have a lot of fun doing that kind of work. It's just something that seems to be mine, and a lot of other people can do it too. To me, it's the essence of acting, to approach something. Of course, I use myself, but I love researching the elements of another personality and using it with the seed of those elements that lie in me, and we all possess such. For instance, an actor is called upon to be a murderer. Very relevant illustration at the moment because of my part in Arsenic and Old Lace. But you see, what is the motivation? That's what you go to. You don't play I am a murderer. You go to what makes that person tick. What do they want? Well, of course, this Brewster that I play, Abby Brewster, wants to make these lonely old men happy and peaceful, and in her insanity thinks that the best way to do it is to put them to rest and bury them in the cellar, put them away from all the troubles and the loneliness of life. So that excessive desire is the motivation which I play and deal with, not with, oh, look at me, I'm a murderer. So, and there are so many aspects that you can go into, but it's always a basic fundamental part of acting is to find out what is the intention, the objective, the driving desire of the character, and that opens up doors.
All right, we have to, great. You just got an acting class in like in 3 minutes. We'll be right back after this. One of the things I would think for all of you, for anyone who has an acting career, you want to keep throwing curves at the audience, particularly if you've been identified for a long period of time in one role. How difficult is it, though, to convince not just the audience, but the producers and the casting people that, to get it, like when you did Eleanor Roosevelt, what we were mentioning during the break, no Edith Bunker there at all. And is it difficult to convince people that, hey, I don't want to do another radio station program director or a vampire or a Western corporal?
Well, yeah, we all just jump in there.
Yeah.
I think you hit it right on the head, certainly from my standpoint, that it has a lot to do with the casting people. That I think you're only as good as your last flick or whatever it is, that's the one they remembered. And it helped me out a little bit mentally when it comes to this subject to read Olivier's new book called On Acting, and he talked about the fact that after he had done Wuthering Heights, that he had to go back to the stage to convince people that he wasn't the character in that movie. So if Olivier can have that problem, then, who's Gary Sandy and should I gripe about it? but it seems to have something to do with educating the casting people that there is something else inside you besides, oh, shucks, gosh. I mean, I did like 7 years of soaps where I was always the heavy. I was the dope pushers, the murderers, and I thought I would never get out of that. And it's kind of a fun thing for me to know that now I'm thought of as being, come on, you guys, let's just get to work. All right. You know? So I guess it all changes around when you get a new successful role in something, and hopefully it's going to be this when we approach Los Angeles.
I know when I've gone for commercials in New York, and I'm not very good at getting them, but they always they bring me in. They say, "Oh, okay, Mr. Frid, will you do your thing?" And I, you know, a vampire, you know, when I was a kid, we used to get the spookiest house in town and play this, and that's the thing that I know about as far as spook, you know, like a spook. It's like a childish thing to do. Yeah. As Gene was talking about earlier, I never played a vampire. What's a vampire? I played, you know, a guy with a problem. It was like an alcoholic. He had to have this something or other. It was like when you're playing an alcoholic, you're not playing the booze, you're playing the problems behind it. Same thing in this case. But to shake this whole image, if I may get a plug-in for my one-man show, I'm doing a thing called Fools and Fiends, which is not too far from my gig, but in this thing I'm doing, one-man show, I have stories that get me away from that, I mean, without losing touch with it. And this is, of course, I'd love to do the rest of my life, make 5 cents an hour doing it, but it's the thing I'd love to do for the rest of my life, because I can make the show exactly what I want it to be, do the stories I want. I play all the characters within certain restrictions, because you're really telling a story. Yeah. A fabulous thing for a person who's been stuck in a certain image to get out of it by doing a one-man show. I recommend it to any actor. It's great fun.
As far as the image is concerned, a producer saw me. I was up for a role, and he said, Larry Storch, all he'll get are laughs when the audience see him. And I said I reminded my wife what Shirley Booth once said, you go back and you tell that casting director that it's very tough to get laughs. Not easy.
Yeah. Marion, what about you? You're, for years, so sweet. Even as a murderess, you're nice.
I know. It's interesting that it doesn't bother me. I don't have a deep-seated feeling about this at all. I've always played a wide range of roles. I have no question of it. I lose my identity very quickly. I'm not recognized in the street too much. Only when I look my worst and go to the bank, they say, hello, Marion. I think, God. I think I have not... Gene has created a national... Edith is in our culture. So it is a great achievement and therefore harder maybe to break from. I don't think that I have made that quite that dent. It would be like the Fonz. It would be like Henry Winkler created a national institution. His jacket's in the Smithsonian. If you've created something that large, then you have more of a problem.
Is that why he produces now? He doesn't...
I have a feeling it is. I think he wants to get away from the Fonz a little.
Oh, he loves to produce, too.
Also, yes, but
he really likes to do that.
Yes, he wants to expand.
He says a great dimension.
I don't mean to be hogging the show here. Who had questions? Go ahead.
When you were talking earlier, I got the impression that when you're on stage doing your play, that you're getting as much enjoyment out of doing this play as a group as we're getting by watching you. Are you actually having that much fun doing the play then?
More people have made that comment. It pleases me no end, because we do, and great joy in doing it, because not only because it's an excellent play and we like each other and we love our director, blah, 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 but because the audience is having such a good time, and that gives us joy.
Yes. It's like what Marion said earlier. I think it's that roundabout thing. We put it out to you, and it's just wonderful to get it back, and it just keeps going like that. You feel our joy because we feel you having such a wonderful time, and it helps just pump us up. It just keeps going. It's nice.
All right, let's take another call. Hi, you're on People Are Talking.
Hi, Tom.
Hi.
After all the years of never been to a stage play, I went last night. And it was absolutely everything that the advertisements say and more. They are the greatest play I've ever seen. And I thought it should be told.
I know. Obviously, that woman has good taste.
Thanks a lot. Go ahead.
I just wanted to say, God bless Larry. You kept my children, 6 children, amused. for all those years, and we just
loved you. Is this a personal
you.
relationship you have with him?
I wouldn't mind, but his wife's sitting there. But it's like no. I felt like I knew him, and I just wanted to say thank you so much because the kids laughed so much.
I know Forrest Tucker would have loved to have heard that.
Oh, you both of you just were so great. Honestly, we just enjoyed, and we're still enjoying.
Thank you very
Larry,
much.
along that line, the two of you seem to be like Laurel and Hardy. What a good team, Forrest Tucker and Larry Storch.
Well, you know, he was very funny, Forrest Tucker. When we first met, I was sitting there, and I'm part Russian, you know, I told you that, part Russian. So in between getting off the horse one day, he said, tell me something. He said, what are you thinking of right this minute? And I said to him, I was just wondering how the Civil War would have turned out if it had been fought underwater. He said, you're a little crazy. He said, we're going to get along fine. So,
you know, that thought's going to nag at me now.
Yeah.
Who else over here? Go ahead. Yeah.
I'd like to ask Marion how she got started in show business.
It's a long story, but I came from a little town in Minnesota, Albert Lee, and I wanted to be somebody special. I thought everybody else was wasting their time, all these other kids. And I just would read books in the library about who's who of famous people. And I really drove myself. I said, who wants to memorize a poem from... Oh, my little hand would go up and I would have a pain in my stomach, but I drove myself like that.
I want to ask you, too, when we come back from the break, that pain in your stomach isn't something that went away after that first recitation in school. You have to face it as actors quite often. I want to see how you deal with that. And right now, let's all contemplate together, what would the Civil War have been like if it was fought underwater?
Very good.
This young lady reminded me, I still have my question back here. Go ahead.
Was it difficult going from comedy to drama and then back to comedy?
Good question. No.
Well, are the rules different at all? Good answer.
No. It's you know, you act, you use the same elements of acting fundamentals
We should ask
in
Larry
both.
that.
However, I find comedy more satisfying because you immediately know the audience response, and it's going back and forth because laughter is the response. I think it's harder to do drama because you don't have that response. And
I force them into dramatic scenes in this very show. I get
you know, there's something innately funny about Larry.
Yeah.
Larry, do you get cast as in serious roles very often?
No, they use me the way when they need, excuse me, but if they feel they need comedy, I guess my name comes up, and I'm very glad about that. I can do serious roles, and I've done them, but I'm most at home in comedy, and I was brought up originally in burlesque, very far back, and here in town, in Scully Square, at a place called the Crawford House.
Uh-huh.
I don't know if any of you remember it, but
Sally a lot of people
Keith,
know the Crawford House here? Good.
Sally Keith was a great, the tassel queen. Watch it there. And she was, so I came from burlesque, and I revere burlesque. I think I still use the timing and the tricks that I've learned in burlesque way back when, and I still use them today, although I don't make them apparent to the gang here on stage.
Oh, we know.
Oh, you do?
I
only thought we were fooling them, huh? How do you keep the energy going? How do you jumpstart your enthusiasm when there are the inevitable downtimes in an actor's life?
who wants that?
Well, I'll venture one, something I've never really done before till this show, and I found myself getting into the habit of doing a lot of exercises before I go right on.
Mm-hmm.
I always feel that anybody who's in a depression, take a somersault, shake yourself up. You know, it clears the head.
Is that what you're doing?
Yeah. Yeah, I know it's weird looking over that, but I go over to the dark corner and I work out in my crazy way, just doing anything for about 5 minutes, and it helps tremendous. It really gets my energy going.
There's a simple fact for me, which I've said it before, and I'll say it again. That for me, I'm aware of the ticket prices these days and things like that. Well, and so there might be a guy who has a date and he's taken her out for dinner and he's bought a couple of seats for the theater. And so no matter how many times I've done it, I owe it to that man that paid the bucks to put out the best I possibly can. And it doesn't make any difference whether you've done it 200 times. It's the first time he's ever seen it. So that motivates me a lot.
The women who buy the tickets are also appreciative of that.
Well, yes. Yeah, well, you know, but I mean, hey.
But we take naps in between the matinee, and we're like children. We go to bed, into our rooms, close the door, we fall dead asleep. But we do owe that to our public. We wouldn't dream of squandering the energies that you have and come to the show not absolutely top form.
That's why we're not total tourists when we're on tour in every city.
Yeah.
We'd like to be, but you can't do too much. I think rest is very important. And that gives me energy. Just sleep.
You know, I'd like to throw out a compliment, if I could, back at you. During one of the commercial breaks, Gene turned and said, "It's a very nice show. He's very good."
Oh, thank you.
Not to stroke you there or whatever, but it's very nice to be. It's very nice to be on a show where we have a chance to talk this way, rather than like maybe a news program where you're aware of the fact, as we are on television, that there's 2 minutes and there's somebody standing back there like, yeah, who cares? Asking the question, but we don't want to hear the answer.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it.
Very nice.
By the way, Arsenic and Old Lace through March 1st at the Schubert Theater. I heartily recommend you go, especially right now. Thanks so much. I appreciate that, really. It's very nice. Who else have I missed over here? Go ahead.
I'd like to know, Marion, what your favorite episode of Happy Days was.
Oh, I have so many, but the one time I danced the tango with the Fonz, and we won the contest, and I had a beautiful sort of a Ginger Rogers kind of an outfit to wear. But
Okay. Let's go to the phones again. Hi, you're on People Are Talking.
Hi, Tom. How are you? First
Good.
of all, I definitely think you are Broadway bound, and I can see yourself definitely starring in your own musical.
As an audience member, maybe. But go ahead.
I have 3 questions to ask anyone, and I'll give them right now.
Okay.
Question number 1, do any of you have any special routines that you go through to get yourself psyched up before a performance? Question number 2,
right.
How is it when you're playing for an audience that's, say, not good, they're not responding the way they should? What do you do? And my 3rd question is, I am a Northeastern University drama major. Those ticket prices are very high, so how about throwing a few of those complimentary tickets my way?
Okay, thanks.
As soon as I started about the prices, I said, oh, no.
See, you talked about the warm-up a bit, but what about it? Sometimes an audience can feel like it's of one psyche when it's out there, and I wouldn't imagine you've had that problem with this play, but in other situations, what is it like to deal with them?
Is this number 1 or 2 questions?
I forget. You know what?
Number 1 is, how do you get yourself psyched up? Number
Yeah.
2 is, what do you do when the audience response isn't full?
Can we take a break and sort this mess out? We'll be right back. That was number 2. I was mentioning during the break that in about a half hour, 45 minutes from now, we're going to tape a show for airing next week, Coping with Difficult People. Thank heavens you're all so nice. This was great. It's going to be, that could be kind of scary.
Must be politicians coming.
Huh? Politicians? You did, in Washington, didn't you have a lot of congressmen and...
Yes.
As the corpses?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, we have a surprise during the curtain call, and I have to give away the surprise now because in Washington, at a benefit for the Women's Research and Education Institute, which is the research arm of the Congressional Caucus on Women's Issues, 13 congressmen, including the new Speaker of the House, Mr. Jim Wright, became our corpses that came out of the cellar to take a bow. That's what happens. And
never have they been so quiet for so long,
wonderful.
right?
They loved every minute of it because they love the spotlight, I find, and there were pictures. It was covered by the press, and they sidle right up if they see a camera. But it was a serious cause. Yeah. It benefited this REI, we call it WREI, which I'm on the board of that organization. The reason I'm on it is because they provide research to the caucus on women's issues to help them enact and initiate legislation. And also they fund internships in congressional offices, graduate students throughout the country. And it's my way of supporting women and women's issues in government. And I want to tell you about a book that will be out in March in the bookstores. It's called 1987, The Status of Women in Depth. And it's a readable book with just a very short chapter with statistics, which will tell you where we are at this moment, which is important, I think, to know. And it will be an annual continuing report each year. It's published by W.W. Norton, and it's not thick. But that young man from Northwestern didn't get his answers.
I think, I know, we're going to answer him in writing, because we only have about another minute and a half. So we'll get a team of experts on those questions, and we'll get back to you. Yeah. Now, Jonathan, you mentioned your one-man show. Anything else that we should know about what's coming up with Marion, Gary, and Larry at all?
No. We're not going to sell any products.
Okay, all right, all right. Who had a quick question? I want to back. Someone didn't. Heather, you didn't ask one before, I think.
What I want to know is, do you guys still get nervous when you're on TV, like if you're doing something new?
Do you ever get, whether it's television or stage, any butterflies, or are you all too seasoned for that?
Always.
Oh, sure. Really?
Always.
You use it.
So don't feel left out.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, if you don't feel nervous, we all do. I know I do. I think every actor I think even Laurence Olivier, does he talk about it in his...
Oh, does he?
We are plumb out of time. I wish we had another hour. Thank you so much. It has been a joy. We'll see you tomorrow afternoon at 12:30. Have a good one. Thank you so much. This is great. This is a great hour. Great. And again, I'm sorry about that.